I was just sitting at the bar, sipping my drink, when suddenly I felt a hand on me. For a second, I froze, and then something happened that no one in that bar will ever forget. It's strange how one small moment can make your whole body lock up, how your brain just stops working for a beat. The music was pounding, people were laughing, the bartender was sliding glasses down the counter like it was any other night. But for me, the world shrank into that single shocking second, the cold glass sweating in my hand, my pulse hammering in my throat, and a hand that didn't belong pressing into me like it had every right. You'd think I would have jumped or shouted or slapped it away. Truth is, I froze, completely froze. And maybe to understand why, I need to back up. Because that night wasn't supposed to be about drama or danger. It was supposed to be simple. Just me, my friends, and a chance to unwind after a brutal week. Work had drained the life out of me, and honestly, I almost didn't go out at all. I remember staring at my phone, my friends spamming me with messages. Come on, one night, don't be boring. You need this. We're not taking no for an answer. And maybe they were right. Maybe I was tired of being the one who always stayed home, tired of scrolling through pictures of everyone else's nights while mine blurred together in silence. So I said yes. We picked a spot downtown, a place buzzing with neon lights that flickered as if they were alive, casting a strange glow on the crowded street. You could smell the mix of beer and cheap perfume before you even opened the door. Inside, the bass thumped so hard it rattled your chest. Conversations collided in the air, and strangers brushed past with half-spilled drinks. My friends dove straight for the dance floor, laughing, already lost in the music. Me, I wasn't ready for that. I slipped onto a stool at the bar, figuring I'd ease into the night. I ordered water first, the glass icy against my fingers, condensation sliding down my palm. I thought maybe later I'd get a cocktail, but for now I just wanted to sit, breathe, and people watch. I remember looking around, noticing little details. The bartender juggling orders without missing a beat. The guy 2 seats down trying too hard to impress his date. The sticky floor under my heels. The way the lights bounced off the bottles behind the counter. I felt invisible, and honestly, I liked it that way. But invisibility is fragile, and mine shattered in an instant. That's when I felt it, his hand. It wasn't some innocent bump from someone walking past. It wasn't a light brush like an accident. No. This was intentional, firm, possessive, a hand that landed where it had no right to be. My body stiffened, my breath caught, and all I could think was, do something. But nothing came out, nothing moved. I sat there frozen, my heart pounding so loudly I thought the entire bar must hear it. And then came the laugh. His laugh, low, smug, like he thought the whole thing was funny, like my silence was his win. My stomach twisted, my face burned hot, and in that moment, I felt a storm building inside me. But here's the thing. Before I could even react, before I could find my voice, something unexpected happened. Something that made every head turn, the music feel like it stopped mid-beat, and left the entire bar staring in shock. Something unexpected happened, and the entire bar turned to look. At first, I thought maybe it was me. Maybe my face gave away everything I was feeling. The fear, the shock, the heat burning under my skin. But no, it wasn't just about me anymore. Because as his hand pressed against me and that arrogant laugh echoed in my ear, someone else noticed. The bartender. He stopped mid-pour, the glass he was filling overflowing as he froze, his eyes narrowing on the scene in front of him. And then, before I even had the chance to push the hand away myself, I heard a sharp voice cut through the music. Hey, knock it off! It was loud enough to slice through the bass, firm enough that even the group of guys behind him stopped laughing for a second. The stranger who had his hand on me glanced up, his smirk faltering, like he hadn't expected anyone to call him out. My heart leapt, not just from relief, but from the sudden shift in energy around me. The bar, once buzzing with careless noise, felt like it had tilted. Everyone suddenly tuned in to what was happening. I finally turned my head, fully this time, meeting his eyes with mine. And I swear, for the first time since his hand landed on me, he looked uncertain, maybe even caught. But he didn't move it, not yet. I gripped my glass tighter, knuckles white, my voice caught in my throat. I wanted to scream at him, shove him away, do something, anything. But my body was still catching up, still thawing from the freeze that had locked me in place. And that's when another voice joined in, this time from behind me. One of my friends had noticed too. She stormed over from the dance floor, her face twisted in fury, and shoved herself between us. "Get your hands off her!" she shouted, her voice shaking but powerful, carrying across the room. People nearby turned, watching, their conversations fading. Suddenly, it wasn't just me and him anymore. It was the whole bar, split in half. The ones who stared in silence, waiting to see what would happen, and the ones who whispered under their breath, shocked at how bold he had been. He chuckled again, but it wasn't the same as before. It was thinner, forced, like he was trying to save face. "Relax, it's just a joke," he muttered, finally pulling his hand away like it was nothing. But it wasn't nothing. Not to me, not to my friend, not to the bartender still watching closely, one hand hovering near the phone under the counter. My body felt like it had been lit on fire, a mix of shame and rage bubbling up. And the truth is, part of me wanted to let it slide, to pretend it hadn't happened, to shrink back into invisibility. But another part of me, stronger, louder, was screaming, "No, don't let him get away with this." I set my glass down, turned fully toward him, and stared him straight in the eyes. "You think this is funny?" My voice was steadier than I expected, though my hands were trembling. The crowd around us quieted, people leaning closer. He smirked again, trying to play it cool, but I saw it, the flicker of doubt, the realization that maybe he'd picked the wrong girl. His friends behind him shifted uncomfortably, no longer grinning as wide. And then, before he could answer, something else happened that flipped the entire situation upside down. The man sitting 2 seats away from me, someone I hadn't even noticed before, stood up. He was tall, built like he belonged in a different kind of bar altogether, the kind where fights broke out regularly. He stepped forward slowly, his presence commanding enough that even the music seemed to dip for a moment. He looked at the guy who had touched me, then down at me, then back at him, and in a calm, steady voice he said, "She said no. You want to test what happens next?" The tension snapped like a wire pulled too tight. The guy's smirk vanished completely, replaced with something else, defensiveness, maybe even fear. He raised his hands in mock surrender, laughing nervously. All right, chill, I was just messing around." But the damage was done. The bar wasn't laughing. The bar wasn't looking away. They were watching him like a predator cornered, waiting to see if he'd back down or escalate. My chest rose and fell, adrenaline flooding me, and for the first time all night, I felt the freeze break inside me. I wasn't silent anymore. I wasn't frozen. I was ready. But the real twist? The night wasn't even close to over. Because just when I thought it was finished, something happened that no one, including me, saw coming. I thought it was over the moment he raised his hands and backed away, but the truth is, it had only just begun. The tension in the bar was still thick, like everyone was holding their breath, waiting for the next move. And for a second, I felt the relief wash over me. His hand was finally gone. The smirk wiped from his face, and maybe, just maybe, I could settle back into my stool and pretend this night hadn't spiraled the way it did. But then one of his friends, the one with the baseball cap turned backwards and a mouth too quick for his own good, shouted across the room, "Man, don't let her embarrass you like that." His voice cut through the uneasy silence, and suddenly the group of guys behind him started jeering, egging him on like they wanted to see a show. My stomach twisted because I knew exactly what that meant. This wasn't over, not for them, and not for me. He turned back toward me, his eyes darker now, less smug and more dangerous, and he stepped closer, not touching me this time, but leaning in with that same low tone. "You think you're tough? You think you can humiliate me in front of everyone?" My throat went dry, but before I could answer, the man who had stood up for me earlier shifted closer too, placing himself like a wall between us. He didn't raise his voice, he didn't even look angry, but his presence alone sent a ripple through the crowd. "Walk away," he said. Simple, calm, final. And for a moment, I thought that was it, that the guy would finally take the hint and leave. But pride is a dangerous thing, and his was bruised beyond repair. He shoved past the man blocking him and jabbed a finger toward me. "She started this," he spat, "so don't think she's walking away clean." The bar collectively gasped, the air electric, and I felt every eye drilling into me. My hands clenched, my pulse raced, and I realized something. I wasn't just scared anymore. I was angry. Really angry. The freeze that had held me hostage before was gone, melted away by the humiliation of being treated like some object, by the audacity of him turning this around on me. I stood up from my stool, the legs scraping loudly against the sticky floor, and I faced him head on. My voice shook, but it carried. You touched me without my permission. You laughed at me. You thought it was a joke. But I'm not the one embarrassed here. You are. The words came out stronger than I expected, and for the first time, his friends stopped laughing. The man in the baseball cap shifted uncomfortably, muttering something under his breath. Even the bartender leaned forward, his hand still near the phone, ready to call someone if it went any further. And then, just when I thought the standoff might explode into something worse, the unexpected twist came. From the back of the bar, a woman's voice rang out, sharp, cutting, filled with venom. So this is what you do when you're not home? Everyone's head turned as a woman pushed her way through the crowd, her heels clicking hard against the floor, her eyes locked on the man who had grabbed me. My jaw dropped as I realized what was happening. She wasn't just anyone, she was with him. Maybe his girlfriend, maybe more, but the look on her face said everything. Betrayal, fury, disbelief. The entire bar shifted, the energy flipping instantly. People whispered, pointing, some covering their mouths in shock. He froze, caught like a deer in headlights, the bravado draining from him as fast as it had come. "Baby, it's not," he started. But she cut him off with a raised hand, her voice trembling but loud enough for everyone to hear. "Don't you dare. I watched you. I saw everything." The crowd erupted in murmurs, the tension breaking into something new entirely. Scandal, chaos, the kind of drama people would talk about long after the night ended. And me? I just stood there, stunned, my anger still burning but now mixed with disbelief at the sudden turn. He wasn't just humiliated by me anymore. He was exposed in front of everyone, including the person he least expected to walk through that door. The bar had gone from noisy to silent to explosive, and now it was buzzing like a hive ready to swarm. My heart pounded, my palms slick with sweat, and all I could think was, this night had taken a turn I never could have written. But deep down I knew it still wasn't finished. Because as she turned to me, her eyes sharp and searching, I realized there was still more to this story. Something bigger, something that would take the chaos to an entirely different level. Her eyes locked onto mine, sharp and unblinking, and for a moment I didn't even know what she was going to say. The bar was still buzzing, whispers bouncing from one corner to the other, people leaning in, waiting for the next explosion. She stood there in front of him, her hands clenched at her sides, her chest rising and falling with every angry breath. Then she turned her full attention on me and asked, "Did he touch you?" Her voice cut through the noise like a blade, direct and demanding, and I felt every pair of eyes swing back to me. My throat tightened, the words heavy, but I forced them out. Yes, he did. The air shifted instantly. A wave of gasps rippled through the crowd, and the man who had grabbed me stumbled back a step like my answer had physically struck him. His face went pale under the flashing neon lights, his mouth opening and closing but no sound coming out. She didn't hesitate. She spun on him, her finger stabbing toward his chest. "You think you can do this? You think you can humiliate me, humiliate her, humiliate yourself in front of everyone?" Her voice cracked, not from weakness, but from the sheer weight of fury behind it. He tried to laugh it off again, but no one was laughing now. Even his friends were shifting, some stepping back, their grins wiped clean. He was cornered, and he knew it. I felt my pulse pounding in my ears, a strange mix of vindication and disbelief flooding me. I hadn't expected this woman, whoever she really was, to show up like a storm out of nowhere. And yet here she was, taking the fire off of me and aiming it straight at him. But it didn't end there, because as she kept yelling, her words spilling out like gasoline, she said something that made the bar fall silent again. "You did this before, didn't you? You've always done this, haven't you?" The crowd stiffened, people glancing at each other, murmuring. My stomach dropped as I realized what she was implying. This wasn't the first time. This wasn't some isolated moment. And suddenly, the weight of it hit me. How many others had frozen like I had? How many others had walked away feeling humiliated and powerless? He snapped then, his voice breaking into the tension like glass shattering. "Shut up! Just shut your mouth!" His mask slipped, the smirk gone, the arrogance replaced with desperation. He grabbed at her wrist, but she yanked it back with so much force he nearly stumbled. The man who had defended me earlier stepped forward again, his voice like steel. "Touch her again and you'll regret it." The whole bar was holding its breath now, waiting to see if fists would fly, waiting to see how far this mess would spiral. My own hands trembled, not with fear this time, but with a strange rising courage. For so long that night I'd been frozen, silent, but now I felt my voice clawing its way up. I raised it higher than I thought I could, letting it carry over the music and the whispers. "You don't get to silence us. Not anymore." My words hung there, vibrating in the air, and something shifted. The crowd, once just an audience, started to respond. I heard someone clap, just once at first, then another, until suddenly half the bar was applauding, some shouting, some cheering. The man who had grabbed me stood there, his face burning red, the walls closing in on him. He looked smaller now, weaker, as if the weight of everyone's eyes crushed the confidence out of him. His girlfriend, or maybe his wife, I still didn't know, looked at me again, her anger softening for just a second, enough for me to see the exhaustion in her eyes, the pain that had clearly lived there for a long time. And I realized this wasn't just my story anymore. It was hers too. The bartender finally picked up the phone, and I knew he was calling someone. Security, maybe the cops. The man swore under his breath, shoving past people, trying to escape the circle that had formed around him. But as he pushed toward the door, someone blocked his way. Another stranger from the bar, tall and solid, arms crossed, shaking his head. "Not until they get here," he said firmly. The guy's eyes darted around, frantic now, no longer in control of the room he thought he owned. And me? I stood there, my legs shaky but rooted, my drink forgotten on the counter, watching it all unfold with this strange sense of clarity. The night that had started with me just sipping water at the bar had turned into something bigger than I could have imagined. And still, I had this gnawing feeling in my chest that it wasn't quite over yet. Because just when I thought the story had reached its peak, another voice rose up from the back, a voice I recognized, one I never expected to hear in a place like this. Another voice rose up from the back, a voice I recognized, one I never expected to hear in a place like this. My heart skipped as I turned toward it, and there he was, my older brother. I hadn't seen him in months, maybe longer, and I never imagined he'd be in this bar tonight. He pushed his way through the crowd, his expression a mix of disbelief and fury, and when his eyes landed on me, I saw the protective spark I'd known since childhood. "What the hell is going on?" he barked, his voice louder than the music, louder than the whispers. The man who had grabbed me froze again, his eyes flicking between me and my brother, suddenly unsure of how much trouble he was in now. My brother didn't wait for an answer. He walked straight up, his hand on my shoulder, steady and reassuring, before he turned on the guy. "You touched my sister?" His words were sharp, no room for denial, and the guy stammered, trying to piece together an excuse. But my brother wasn't having it. He stepped forward chest to chest, and for a moment I thought fists might fly. The crowd leaned in, hungry for whatever would happen next. But before it could escalate, the bartender shouted over the noise, "Cops are on their way!" That announcement was like a spark. People gasped, some stepped back, others muttered excitedly. The man who had humiliated me tried to twist free, to push through the bodies blocking him, but the strangers who had stood their ground earlier closed ranks, refusing to let him slip away. His girlfriend, maybe his ex now, was still standing there, her arms folded, her glare burning through him like fire. "You deserve whatever's coming," she spat, her voice trembling with rage and betrayal. My brother kept his hand on me, grounding me, but when I looked up at him, I saw something else in his eyes, pride. For standing up, for not staying silent, and maybe even for surviving that frozen moment that had almost stolen my voice. Minutes later, the blue and red lights flashed through the windows, painting the bar in streaks of color. The music had stopped entirely, the room buzzing only with whispers and the shuffle of feet as two officers pushed inside. They didn't even need to ask much. The crowd erupted, pointing, telling them what had happened, their voices overlapping like a chorus. One officer raised a hand, quieting them, before walking straight to me. "Miss, are you okay?" he asked, his voice calm, steady. I swallowed hard, my throat dry, but I nodded. I am now. My words came out soft, but they felt heavier than anything I'd said all night. Then I gestured toward him, the man who had thought he could touch me without consequence. That's the one. The officer's gaze followed my hand, landing on him, and in an instant, the cuffs were out. The crowd erupted again, some cheering, some just sighing in relief. He protested, of course, his voice high and desperate, shouting about how it was just a joke, how everyone was overreacting, but no one was listening. Not anymore. They dragged him toward the door, his voice growing smaller with every step until it was drowned out by the noise of the bar coming back to life. But it wasn't the same as before. Something had shifted. Something had broken and healed in the same night. I sat back down on the stool, my legs trembling, my brother beside me, my friends finally gathering around, their faces pale but relieved. The bartender slid me a fresh glass of water, his eyes kind. "On the house," he said softly, and I managed to smile through the storm still raging inside me. The woman, his girlfriend, the one who had exposed him to, walked over slowly. She looked tired, her anger still simmering, but there was something softer there too. She placed a hand gently on my arm and whispered, "Thank you for saying something." I didn't know what to say back, so I just nodded. Because in that moment I realized it wasn't just about me. It was about every time he'd done this before, every person who had frozen like I had, every silence that had given him power. Tonight that silence broke, and even though my body still shook, even though my heart still raced, I knew I'd done something important. I'd spoken when it mattered. My brother walked me out of the bar, the night air cool against my burning skin. The city felt different, louder, brighter, alive. As we stepped onto the street, he looked down at me and said, "You handled yourself better than you know." I let out a shaky laugh, the weight finally lifting. "I didn't feel like it." He shook his head, squeezing my shoulder. "You did more than most people would have." And as we walked away, the chaos of the bar fading behind us, I thought about how one ordinary night, one simple choice to go out, had turned into a story that no one in that bar would ever forget. A story I would carry with me, not just as a memory of fear, but as proof that even in the moments when you freeze, you can still find your voice, and sometimes that voice can change everything.